And it is recording. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you're calling in from. This is, I believe, our fifth installment of the DPM Launch and Learn. Today, we're going to be focusing on DevOps Insights. With that, we're going to start with a poll, and then I will hand it off to one of our product managers, Eileen Long. But this poll is a little long, so I'll give you a couple minutes to fill it out. Let us know if you have any questions.
Sorry, I think I ended the poll. Can you open that back up?
Oh, yes, I can put that back up. Give me a second. Sorry, everyone. Let's try this again. Let's see. Relaunching poll. There you go. For those of you that already filled it out, this should be very quick the second time around. Look at that. Boom.
It's multi-select too, though, so feel free to.
Yeah, don't worry. You can't fail on this quiz. We'll give you all another minute to complete it. It's about 2 minutes to complete the poll. And then we'll end it and get it on. All right, and now closing the poll. Oh, what interesting results. Answers all over the board here. Eileen, did you want me to share or did you want to hop into it?
Sure, I'll get into it. Just though, looking at the poll results, it looks like there's, we are split across the board. Some people haven't heard of, DevOps change velocity or aren't entitled to it, or hearing about insights in DPM as well for the first time. And then there's other kind of side of the coin that are currently using DevOps already, insights as well, even insights with DPM. So a good mix here. So I will be, thank you for the customers already using DevOps. I'll do a quick introduction about DevOps for those who haven't heard about it. But then we'll also focus on our insights dashboards, and then we'll hand it over to Caitlin to go over a quick demo with DevOps Insights in digital portfolio management as well. So thank you for filling out that poll. For those who don't know me, my name is Eileen Leong. I am a product manager for the ServiceNow DevOps Change Velocity offering here. I've been with ServiceNow for about 4 years. Previously worked at Oracle, Pivotal, that was bought by VMware, and then Broadcom, Electric Cloud, another DevOps company, IBM. So really all over the place, a lot of big enterprise companies. And when we look at DevOps, particularly all the companies I worked at and the customers that we have, it's usually about scaling DevOps that makes it difficult for users. So we'll talk about briefly what our offering is here. So DevOps change velocity was really an offering from ServiceNow that was born from our customers. We were seeing our customers going to great lengths to customize their use of change management and trying to make DevOps work for them, that we ended up creating our own DevOps offering here. And the problem statement, the issues we're solving, customers generally have these pain points listed here in the slide, right? Where it's tough to just get visibility amongst their DevOps teams. There's friction within change management itself, and really hard to govern or audit the DevOps data that they have today. And as I walk through this, feel free to, put in the comments if there's any questions or feedback along the way. Happy to just, take questions as we go as well. All right, so DevOps change velocity itself, our solution is using the DevOps data itself to help drive the automation of change requests itself through data-driven policies. We connect to different DevOps tools itself to provide visibility amongst all of that data. And then with that data in ServiceNow, we have the end-to-end traceability for audits. You can utilize our core of ITSM with the incidents and outages and operational data, and now connected all the way through to the DevOps data as well. And so platform owners, ServiceNow platform owners as well, have better insights into their DevOps tools and data without having to go, bug different people in different departments as well. So with DevOps change velocity, or just in general, in the DevOps landscape, we're seeing, a shift in the operating models, right? So there are more and more, in the past, only having centralized teams with kind of authoritative command of like the different tools you use and whatnot. But now there are more and more DevOps teams that are distributed, right? And those distributed DevOps teams are trying to be more agile. They're trying to release quickly. They're using more, cloud native technologies, more forward leaning. They're trying to move fast, but at the same time, what there needs to be, from what we're hearing from our customers, is there needs to be some sort of digital contract back to the centralized teams. Like, it's great you're moving fast, but we still need to ensure compliance, ensure governance, and have auditability for it. So if we look at the DevOps landscapes with the tools, because there are so many autonomous teams right now, right, chose their own tools to optimize for their own needs, the landscape of the tools, even within an organization, ends up looking pretty fragmented, right? So there's a lot of times I'm talking to customers and we show the slide and they're like, hey, those group of logos look exactly like my company, right? There's just a lot of different logos. You're using Jenkins, using Azure DevOps, Jira. Some teams are using GitHub, some haven't moved there. And while there's usually an effort to try to consolidate, it's just not possible, or you've made acquisitions or whatnot, that there's just a lot of different tools out there. And because of that tool fragmentation, there leads to the other challenges, right? The lack of visibility. How do you know, are there high performing teams or low performing teams? What's being released? Poor time to delivery. The DevOps teams, the developers trying to work on code, push code. Now they have additional administrative tasks. How do I fill out the change management forms? How do I let other management or leadership know what I'm working on? And it slows them down, having to report all that and make sure that they're compliant as well. And the final box there, just harder to stay in compliance because there's this friction trying to release fast, but utilize change management or with change management itself. What we're seeing is a lot of change requests or changes being released that are actually even going undocumented as well. So for a lot of customers, as high as 80% of changes being released aren't actually documented. Obviously not great for governance or compliance as well, whether it's just internal apps or some teams haven't moved into change management yet, or they're just releasing bug fixes. It becomes pretty tedious to keep track of everything. So with that, high amount of changes not being documented, obviously not ideal for large enterprises or customers in regulated industries, right? So this is the general problem statement that we're looking at. And the pain for the personas is generally spread across multiple different personas here. So like I mentioned, the developers having, the additional administrative tasks when they just want to be efficient in code and release. The VP of app dev or just management leadership trying to figure out, how are my teams doing? What is being released? What is the latest changes? Really hard for them to get visibility. The change management themselves, as we've moved to being more agile and we're releasing a lot more frequently, even if they are creating all the changes, right? There's just so many changes now. How does a change manager keep up with it? How do they even know what's risky and not risky? It makes their job also a lot more difficult. And then moving further to the right, governance, like I mentioned, it's harder to keep track of. Even operations support, if there are more incidents or outages, how do I tie it back to the correct changes into the correct teams that might have released recent code? So providing that traceability of DevOps data all the way through. So now going into our actual DevOps change velocity application here. So what we do is we integrate with all the DevOps tools. The secret sauce is really, we do that in a passive way, right? We integrate, we're really just collecting data from the tools. And then we normalize it into our own DevOps data model within ServiceNow, right? So whether you're using Bitbucket for commits or Azure DevOps for commits or GitHub for commits, it doesn't matter. It comes into us as a commit. If you're using Jira or Agile 2.0, it doesn't matter. We see them as work items, those epics and features coming in, and pipelines as well, right? Jenkins or Azure DevOps, we get those pipeline executions. So it's a great way to get data in a normalized fashion. So we just know, hey, these are pipelines that run, these are the code commits and whatnot. It doesn't really matter what tools you're using. We integrate with a lot of the majority of the major tools out of the box, but we also have frameworks where you can create your own user integrations as well, if there's something that's not currently supported out of the box. So with that, collecting information for all the different tools, we can create that digital thread of information, right? So here's an example in the screenshot of a pipeline execution that runs. Before this could be a Jenkins pipeline, Azure DevOps pipeline, but at the same time, before you reach the prod deployment stage, we can pause the pipeline. We can automatically create that change request with all the appropriate data, right? So we make the connections of all the unit tests that's run, for example, or security tests that have run, the commits, the actual committers, the work items, and we can all tie that in and evaluate it in change. And wait for approvals before we continue for production deployment, right? So that's really handy way to collect all the data, easily view it automatically, even approve it automatically before you release the production, right? So we have out of the box DevOps change approval policies. So with all the data that we get, you can create policies around, code coverage should be above 70%. You should have these integration or these tests, obviously not fail. There have to be no current outages. You can create your own policy and utilize that to help you automatically, approve and release to production, or if not, some other combination of, here's the data and still go through manual approvers if it still seems risky, or, still stop for manual approvals all the time if it's a very critical app. So there's different, ways you can utilize the data here. And then, of course,
Yeah, Eileen, one quick question came up in the chat that might be useful to talk about in the context of what you were just covering.
Sure.
So the question is from Curtis, and he's asking how much impact should be expected if the change process team has customized change management and is not using release management properly.
Gotcha. Yes, thanks, Curtis. Good question here. We do see that in general, when you're adopting change automation, it is a little bit of a journey, right? People want to step in it because they do have heavily customized change process. So we have different ways you can get started. For example, if you're currently manually creating change, you could just add DevOps data to it. So not change any of your existing process, right? Not edit pipelines and just add the data to it, right? Like select an artifact and we'll automatically pull in all the data. And then and then the next step up is, can you automatically create the change and utilize your same workflows with the data? And then beyond that, slowly layer in, like maybe for certain teams, you start to automatically approve and use different workflows for some teams, test that out for like your high performing teams. If that's going well, and then slowly expand that out. But in general, there is a little bit of an adoption journey, and there's different ways you can step into it before you go full blown, change automation and change approvals for your whole entire organization there. But yeah, that is something you would have to look at. There's change managers themselves, generally it's a team effort that you'd have to work with the change manager as your DevOps teams as well to make sure they understand, the goal and how you're trying to help them and help the development team as well. Hope that answers your question. If not, feel free to, come off mute or add more to the chat as well, and happy to take more additional questions offline. Some of these are obviously long conversations depending on your organization as well. All right. And finally, the last screenshot here, of course, as we're collecting all the data, there's different use cases that you can use the DevOps data for, right? That first one being that change automation that I talked about, right? Helping your change requests, change approvals go faster. And while we're getting all that data, we can also show great DevOps insights as well, right? So I'll pop into an instance after this to show some of our dashboards here, but we make all the connections from. So when you bring in all the data, you make kind of different DevOps applications where you scope, planning tools like work items, along with coding tools like GitHub and your orchestration tool. And because we have that thread between planning, coding, and orchestration, we can give you a lot of great insights, right? Like lead time. When you open up Epic or a story, what's that time it is from when that story is created to the actual first code commit to all the way of it being actually released, right? Not just completed in Jira, but actually deployed to production. So we have great metrics and lead times around different areas such as that. But I'll, with that, go ahead and jump into an instance for a demo. Any other questions before I move into demo portion of Insights?
Nothing in the chat. I don't know if anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question.
Feel free to interrupt me, but I'll keep moving along here. So this is our DevOps change workspace. I didn't mention this, but DevOps change velocity is part of ITSM Pro. So if you're an ITSM Pro user, you already have DevOps. So if you install DevOps, you would get a recommended way to onboard is through the DevOps Change Workspace. So I just launched that here with the DevOps Change Workspace. This is where you'd come and you connect the tools. Pretty simple to do. So we walk you through it where you can connect to a planning tool, like I mentioned, coding tools, orchestration. So even artifact tools as well. So we have a lot of tools out of the box. We are expanding our integrations constantly. We software quality, we connect to like SonarQube as an example for code coverage and whatnot. In August, we're releasing our integration with the SecOps team as well, and we'll leverage a lot of their security tool integration. So we'll be adding Veracode support, check marks, and whatnot out of the box in the upcoming releases as well. So, good visualization of all the different tools that we support out of the box. And then once you connect to them, get those webhooks up and running, we get the data coming in, then you can look at our Insights module here, right? So this is our link into digital portfolio management as well, where we're going to, Caitlin will show you some of the insights that will surface into there as well. But in DevOps Change Workspace, we have our Insights module. That screenshot of the summary page gives you kind of at a glance look at some of the metrics that most customers are looking for, including a quick look at, hey, all the applications within DevOps, just what is the data coming in for those, right? The work items, commits, quick glance at passing percentage, right? Hotel reservation system, that application not as great as this corp site application that's doing really well in their testing here. And then recent pipeline executions as well. We have a lot of great filters as well. So the different applications you create in DevOps Change Velocity is your own kind of grouping. We do have ties to the CMDB as well. And the ties that we make to the CMDB is how it kind of flows into digital portfolio management and potentially other areas in ServiceNow as well. But you can create the applications. DevOps applications also tied towards the business app here as well. So we have filters. If you want to filter by a specific business app, CMDB, or even application service as well. So we have different filters like that, or application product model as well, or repo. So you can really narrow down and look at, as a leader, like, well, how are my teams doing specifically for the teams? And quick look at the different insights tabs here that we have. We have a lot of breadth, right? This is meant to really show you, like, because we're having so much data come into the system, we can show you a lot of breadth to our insights. Customers, of course, come in and customize it, add their own, but it gives them an idea of like, oh, this is the data we get, and can tweak it to make it relevant to their organization. But this is the flow metrics tab, often regarded as like value stream metrics. You want to see the flow of work moving through your system, right? Can I see, how long generally things stay work in progress? My last releases, is it all bugs, or am I releasing some stories and epics, right? Getting an idea of some of that distribution. How long does it take when you plan something to actually getting it released, right? A lot of days for some of these tasks here, but gives you an idea. And then what's currently work in progress on these days, right? Is it bugs, features, tasks, and whatnot? And then you can, of course, also even filter by, I just want to look at epics at a higher level, and do that as well. And then it defaults to, last 30 days on most, but of course you can come in and easily change the date range to what you want as well. The change acceleration tab, this is really for that first use case around automatic or accelerating change requests, right? So you can see the general, your change request volume. You want to see the time to close changes going down. Obviously, you don't want open changes for a long time that are stalling your DevOps teams. Are you automating more, or more of the manual? And if you're using policies to automatically accept them, which ones are automatically accepting, which policies maybe keep failing for your DevOps teams, right? Like maybe code coverage of 90% isn't possible yet, and they just can't make it, and it will be a while. So you get some of the good metrics here to see how you're moving towards helping with change acceleration, even some ROI metrics as well for determining how many hours you're saving. The accelerate metrics are the classic DORA metrics, right? So the famous accelerate book. A lot of research has come in where for DevOps teams, it's really these 4 metrics that determine high performing teams, right? We have the development metric, right? From the time it takes from your first commit for when it releases, you want it to see it going down. Obviously, if it's going up, then you're not being as agile, or there's something slowing down your process. How often are you releasing? You know, not everyone's Facebook of the world releasing several times a day. But of course, you do want to be releasing generally more frequently than not. It gives you an idea. And then if you pair that with a couple of the key operational metrics, right? The development metrics, DevOps, Dev plus Ops, you've got, you know, how are you doing for MTTR for incidents? The change failure rate when you release, is that going well as well? So if you have kind of looking at these 4, if they're all pretty good, that gives you a pretty good confidence level in the specific app or the specific service or that team as well. And then quality metrics here, we bring in from SonarQube, and like I mentioned, you know, different security tools as well. You can easily also build policies around, like I mentioned, code coverage, test passing percentage, even vulnerabilities, no 0 critical vulnerabilities or whatnot, and just overall bug counts there. That's probably the area that we see the most breadth in terms of insights of customers coming in and wanting to drill in and more around the vulnerabilities, customizations there. And then development, we have a lot of information coming from those coding tools around the committers and their commits as well. And then operational stability, we do have that tie-in right to the overall ITSM ecosystem through the application service around the incidents and outages and service availability. We can even bring in error budgets as well. I don't have it here in this one, but if you install like SRM as well, you'll bring in the error budget data as well. So good breadth and data across essentially the entire life cycle of software development here. All right. All right, with that, I gave you a really quick whirlwind tour of, you know, our DevOps change velocity offering, a look into our out-of-the-box dashboards here. There's no questions. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Caitlin now for digital portfolio management and how we work together there.
Awesome. Thanks, Eileen. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. So I hope that was a kind of a good background or additional context for anybody who isn't quite as familiar with DevOps, or a good refresher if you are, or maybe you learned something new. So one of the things, right, with DPM is we're solving for a particular persona. And this is a refresher slide. The solution owner, again, solution being more of an archetype that represents somebody who might call themselves a service owner, service delivery manager, application owner, you know, or even a product manager. Somebody who owns something through the end-to-end life cycle. And so they really are interested in their build activities and some of those additional ops run metrics. And we saw a really natural gap that from the solutions that we were providing, and an opportunity working with the DevOps team to fill some of those gaps that we were seeing. So when we look at our problem statement solving for the solution owner, one of the things that they do is they create that prioritized roadmap, and they have to prioritize what they work on. So like Eileen was showing, there's some key metrics around how long things take to complete, what the team is delivering, and the amount of work that a team can take on at a given time. And we didn't have that visibility without DevOps. And so that was a key problem that we wanted to solve. And we found a really nice solution working with that data that we had available. The other side is assessing team performance. So they really have to understand how well their team is delivering and where they need to improve. So they lack insight into deployment frequency, how quickly the teams are restoring from when an incident is caused by a change, and then also how frequently the changes are failing. So again, with Eileen talked about the challenge of having all these disparate tools, teams working in all these different places. Owners just really didn't have that visibility. They didn't have that easy, quick access to that information. And so it creates a lot of blind spots and it hinders their ability to improve their team performance. And again, we identified that using and working with the DevOps data, we could start to solve some of those and really focus on bringing those specific insights into DPM. And so what we did was, as Eileen mentioned, there's so much data that we could look at and pull in, and the number of filters that DevOps provides gives so much flexibility so that the owner can really go in and tweak and tailor what they want. But what we can do in DPM is we can give them a really good starting point and give them more of the holistic picture in the context of other data that we can surface. So we didn't want to recreate the insights workspace or dashboard that DevOps has, but we wanted to curate the information, pull in some of those key stats, and really tailor the visualization in a way that we thought would benefit the owner. And then if they needed more information, we could link them back into the DevOps Insights workspace so that they could adjust the filters, see different data types beyond what we're giving them, again, at that like first pass high level. So these are some of the key design challenges that we worked together to tackle, and where we ultimately focused our attention for this first kind of pass at how we solve for the solution owner in DPM, leveraging that key DevOps data. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick.
Caitlin, you have a question in chat.
Oh,
Curtis
okay.
asked, do change scorecards factor in or provide input into this?
Not at the moment, or Eileen, I don't know. I'm actually not super familiar with the change scorecard.
Yeah, some not out of the box for any of the insights as well. Some people, will use like success scores in terms of, part of their like change approval policies or whatnot, but currently no out of the box widgets for those.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I didn't think so, but I wasn't entirely positive. So I'm getting an instance up here. You'll have to bear with me a little bit. So we had an instance snafu, and so this is not a typical demo instance that we use, but it will give you a good view into the widgets that we surface, the type of data, and then how we link into the DevOps workspace. And then I'll also show you how we've set it up so that you can kind of turn on specific DevOps metrics that you want that we ship out of box. Or if you're not ready, they're not available for you. So there is some configurability that we provide in our system properties. I'm going to go ahead into the DPM workspace. And one of the main places that we started with the DevOps data is on the business application. So focusing on pulling in that key build, like the key flow metrics in particular for the business applications, and then also the accelerate metrics. So those are the two tabs, if you remember, Eileen was showing in the insights. That's what we are surfacing or focusing on in DPM for the business application level. So you can see here on the build tab, this is where we're highlighting those key flow metrics. And again, they're all around how the team is delivering and what they're working on. And so what we wanted to do was look at a specific work item type. So there was a ton of different types and a lot of different levels that an owner can look at in DevOps. What we wanted to do at this level was really focus on epic and feature work in terms of that flow time. And then again, if they need more details, they want to look at story flow time, things like that, they can launch into the DevOps Insights and get that level. But we did focus for average flow time really on that epic and feature level. And then looking at distribution of work. So is the team more focused on stories or bugs, and how is that evolving over the past few months? So you can see here really clearly that distribution and the average over the last 30 days. So we're giving the owner insights into where then they may need to reprioritize their roadmap. So for example, if they've been focusing a ton on story work, the defects might be piling up and they'll need to adjust that roadmap to focus more on bug work potentially. And then we also wanted to show work in progress cycle time so that the owner can get a sense on how long things are taking. And I'm sorry for the data that it's looking the same. It won't be the same. But you can see the first one is for epics. The second one is for stories, last 30 days. And then the third one is for bugs. If I can get that to show up, last 30 days. And then we show the work in progress items right in context. So here you can compare, the owner can compare how long does something typically take in work in progress and how many can the team then cover at the same time. And they can use that data again to create those roadmaps that are pretty accurate. And again, kind of make adjustments as more data is coming in for them. And then below the flow metrics, we surface two key accelerate metrics. And the reason we're putting these on the build tab is it's more related to build activities. We surface two additional accelerate metrics on the run tab, and I'll show you that in a second. So here we're looking at the commit to deploy lead time, and then also the average deployment or the deployment frequency. We give the average for the last 30 days, and then we give a really nice time series. So then the owner can assess how this data is evolving and changing over time. And then if we go to the run tab, we have these two additional accelerate metrics. So it's the mean time to restore from an incident caused by change. So how quickly are the teams addressing those incidents? And then the change failure rate. So this is telling you like how often they're changing, or they're failing. I'm sorry. I apologize. The data isn't updated again. This instance is a little funky right now, but you can see the type of metrics that we're surfacing. The really cool thing is that in addition to the DevOps change metrics, we also show you this data for the non-DevOps changes. So it's represented as other. Unfortunately, we couldn't control the label on that one, so it's a little maybe confusing, but it's basically any non-DevOps change. So your typical changes. So any incident caused by a change, what's the mean time to restore? We give you that, and you can compare your DevOps changes to your non-DevOps changes. And ideally, right, you should see improvements with your DevOps changes, just because you can improve that velocity. And then I'll show you when you link into DevOps. So this is specifically Accelerate. So we'll take you to the Accelerate tab, and we filter the data to the business application that the user came from. So they'll see all those metrics with that specific filter applied, and then they can adjust the filters as needed, depending on what time period they want to see or what specific, apps or combination of apps that they want to look at. And again, our data had dropped off. So this is showing no data available because it was zeros recently in the last 30 days. Maybe I can show the flow metrics instead. Let me go back. That was not a good example. Let's see here. Okay. Well, this will normally show you the correct charts, and then you can actually drill down to get to the source records. So that's also nice for the owner to, it's like progressive deep dive into those data points. And I'm sorry, I'm not sure why the data isn't working in this instance, but I hope at least that gives an idea of the specific metrics, the reason why we pulled in these particular ones, and the filters that we apply for the owner in the context of DPM. And then the idea is that they can get to that very granular level of detail if they're interested in the DevOps workspace. The other thing I wanted to show is when you go into digital portfolio management, again, as an admin, we have this administration section. We covered this in a previous session, but we do have these properties, the DevOps properties. So this will become available when DevOps is installed. So if you've installed the DevOps plugins on your instance, this is available. And by default, it will not be enabled. You can then choose to enable those metrics in DPM by checking the box and saving. And then when the property is enabled, we want to optimize the page, the business application pages for the DevOps data. So what we do is we show the flow metrics on the build tab, and we show the accelerate metrics. So we'll give you all those that we just showed you. They are treated as like separate sections. So you can hide the flow metrics, for example, or you could hide specific accelerate metrics on the build and the run, depending on what you want to use or what you're ready to use. And then what we also do is we hide the Agile 2.0 data from the build tab. So that includes the epics, stories, releases, and sprints sections. You can always re-show them, but the reason we do that is Agile is considered an integration with DevOps. So that data will be shown in those widgets. And we didn't want there to be an obvious discrepancy between the data. So again, you can show them if you want, but we'll hide that as part of that optimization for DevOps. And then you can always hide and show. So there's no restriction around making those updates. If we go to the business application page, then here you'll be able to see the different content configurations. So as I mentioned, the epic, stories, releases, and sprints, these will all be hidden. You can re-show them once that's activated. And then with the DevOps, you can hide those specific sections depending on what you want to use and what you're ready for. So that's how you can, and I'm in the wrong scope, but if I click here, this will become editable. So you can make those adjustments if needed once that's enabled. Okay, let's see. I see a question from Mike. I see the app service. Yeah, so that's something that we've talked about, providing this also on the app service level. One of the things you probably noticed is for the app service, we only have the run tab. And the reason is that when we talk to the CSDM team, they'll tell you that the business app is where you're supposed to do all your plan and your build. And then the run really should be based on the app services. So all the app service data is shown on the business application run tab. And then thus the application service is more of that like instantiation of the business app itself. But the more that we talk to customers, the more that we actually hear this feedback that no, a lot of that actual build is happening on specific app services. And so surfacing build and run tabs for the app service is being requested. And so that's something that's in our backlog and something we want to bring in. Once we introduce those tabs and more of that full end-to-end life cycle, what we'd like to do is provide those same metrics just filtered at the app service level, related to the DevOps. So then you could see again, okay, here's my business app level, here are the app services, and how that, data is kind of related and rolled up. So that is something that we're looking at, coming down the pike. But if anybody else is on the call and has any thoughts about that, having the full life cycle on the app service, if that makes sense to you, and if that's something that you're looking for, please do let us know, because it helps us prioritize our roadmap in terms of what folks are looking for, and what you're ready for.
Yeah, and Caitlin, maybe in the CSDM documentation too, because I thought I've seen somewhere where they do show those different iterations of the, you have dev, you have dev, test, and production, and it seemed to show that at the application service level, which would make sense for that lifecycle would be. So maybe there's some clarification within the CSDM if that's a case at the business app too. Just that we're foggy and we're just stepping all over each other in the CSDM between the business app and the app service, kind of making it like for like. And if we do that, why is it the same? So maybe some clarification, either specifically where we're not getting it, or maybe there's clarification within the CSDM documentation that can help with that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, the CSDM is clear as mud, right? It takes quite a bit of time and energy, and at least for me to fully wrap my head around it. And then it doesn't help that it keeps changing. So yeah, it's tricky, but we do, I think it makes sense to bring it in, at least based on some of the feedback that we've been getting. So that is a gap that we have, and one thing that we're working on addressing soon. And then we can bring some of those particular insights and data at the app service level, which I think will go a long way for folks. Are there any questions related to this topic or for Eileen, for myself? Was this helpful? Did it make sense? Did it add more confusion? Okay. I think that's also typical, Cassandra, where again, as customers are learning about the CSDM and getting things registered in the CMDB, everybody kind of comes at this at different levels and in different ways. So that makes sense. Everybody's
Yeah,
on
it just seems
vacation
like
mode.
DPM has its ties into everything, right? It just opens up a lot more because what do we do? I mean, you can see that you can look at the life cycle of the product and then the business application and then, okay, the app service. So I guess it's opening up for anyone to find their path to be able to do that. But then I see, oh, what's the next thing, right? Are you going to bring that strategic portfolio management in that where you have a pipeline based on the roadmap that's there? So yeah, I mean, love that we have the whole visibility there and to find your path to continue on. All the paths are available, and to find our path for it to make sense, I guess is where we struggle and find our way, but also makes it exciting.
Yeah, we do. We want to make DPM something that can be used by anyone, at any phase of the CSDM adoption, or depending on what you're using and how you're using it. So, of course, that's a work in progress for us too, to try to make it more flexible and dynamic and pull in all the different data points, and everybody does it a little different and everyone has a little bit of a different need, so to speak. So that's been a fun challenge for us. But yeah, we're pretty excited about the stuff that we have in so far. And Eileen mentioned the SecOps work that's coming with them. And so that's something that we've had on our backlog for a while, is how we can surface vulnerabilities and security incidents and things like that in the context of the solutions and DPM for that owner persona. So that's something that will hopefully be coming. Lots of exciting things.
Thanks. Hey, Chris, just maybe something, we have crawl, walk, run and other aspects of it too. And as we dive into this with DPM, like our MVP is on availability of offerings, right? And that rolls up the portfolio. And, that's at the basics of it. And it'd be cool to see how people have progressed and where they are from, just to get up and crawl on where that is. And maybe there's documentation on all already, but that'd be cool to see someone that's at different stages of the journey with us.
That is good insight. That is actually something we're working on. It takes a little bit of time for us to design that kind of content. But thank you for the insight.
Are there other kinds of metrics that people are generally looking for or want in their dashboards that maybe you haven't seen in DPM or in DevOps Insights? Or perhaps for the crawl portion that Mike mentioned, where most people starting with in terms of what kinds of insights they're looking at.
We have a sleepy group today. Everybody's in
Yes.
vacation mode already.
Gotta figure out how to serve coffee over Zoom.
The only thing I'd like to be able to see is a one view, like in our dependency mapping that we have out there. We have to go, I know you guys are working on this, but we have to look at two different views to go from offering all the way up into the business application. So now that we have and we're having all this insight. It'd be nice to be able to allow us to be able to have that view and the relationships all the way up and see it in one view from the dependency map and other spaces as well, as far as dashboarding and things like that. That nice view of the relationships all the way through the map.
You mean, yeah, so you said the offering linked all the way to the business app?
Yep. So you can see it from, it'd be cool. I mean, I'd love to see it from the portfolio all the way, but yeah, from the service offering to the application service, we see that, but then you have to go to a different view to get from application service up to the business application, right? So I know that's something that you're aware of, but just to tie that whole view across as you guys look at things, because we're, as a digital portfolio, we want to see that entire thing. And now as you're bringing business application even more into scope, that brings that need even more relevant.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's great feedback.
Any other thoughts, comments? No need to be shy, y'all. We can close this early, but would rather, use the time we've already have slotted.
Mike is carrying the team today.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. You're getting kudos in the chat as well. Well,
I'll ask a question since you guys are begging for questions, and this might already exist, but one thing that's come up internally is just understanding like the consumption of the services. What is the model to view like the consumption of the service offerings? Is that just through the service catalog, or is there a way to say, I'm not sure how you measure that.
Can you talk a little bit about when you say consumption, what you are looking for specifically?
Well, we might have a little bit of a one-off situation here, but internally to my organization, we have several different businesses that we provide services to, and some companies might consume one offering versus a different one, and so on and so forth, and different services, right? So we would want to keep track in kind of this digital portfolio, who's consuming what services, and then that. So I don't know. I know that there's something in there to kind of track that, but I think it assigns it to like the user base. And last time I looked at that, I didn't really like how it worked, but just wondered, does that exist? Or
are you, when you're saying there's something, were you looking at the subscriber model?
Yeah,
is that what you're talking about? Okay,
that's it.
Yeah, so we do have the subscriber tables that you can use, and that's currently the way that we track who the service is being provided to, or like we could say like consumption. So one of the ways that you can there's different ways that you could subscribe. It does get down to an individual user, but you can subscribe by department, or you could subscribe by company. These tables. I've also seen a request for, I think it's like subscribe by, I want to say maybe an organization or something. I'll have to double check the exact terminology.
No, we use the company field, so that would work. I think what it did though, I can't remember specifically, but I think when you looked at the digital portfolio interface, it showed, even if you subscribed to by company, I can't remember for sure, but I thought it just showed all the employees that were subscribed to it underneath that company when you use the company field. But I would rather just be able to see the company.
Yeah, so we do have, we have the way that it's represented is more through the, let me just quickly go to an offering. There are, and I don't know which one has data. We'll see. They're like little boxes, and it'll give you a count, but it's broken out by each of those tabs. So it'll be location, company, user. Let me go to the info tab. So you should be able to click.
You should be able to
edit.
see the companies there. Okay.
Yes.
I think that might be different now than it was when I initially looked at it,
Okay.
but it was in an early version when I was testing this. So
I see. Yeah, so that's a way that we do it now, and it seems like that could be something that you guys use. And then you could use catalog items to see who is actually then requesting things related to the offering. Because we do track, we provide some out-of-box reporting for people who are requesting catalog items related to an offering. But then you could also use catalog items to allow people or companies to subscribe to the offering. So there's different ways that we've seen people use the catalog item and the subscriber tables, but that's what we support today for that.
excellent. No, great answer.
Cool. Thank you for asking your question.
Yes, thank you, Gunnar. Very much appreciate it. We only have 1 minute left, so I'll go ahead and close out for today. Very quiet group, but we do appreciate you joining today and learning a little bit more about DevOps and its relationship with DPM. Our next call is going to be on July 12th. We'll be focusing on common service data models. As always, if you have any questions between now and then, feel free to reach out. There should be a recap email coming your way in the next, let's call it 48 hours, hopefully before you head out for the long weekend for those in the AMS. And with that, thank you all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.